Hey there, I'm Lisa Campion, and this is The Miracle of Healing on Empower Radio, where conscious people come together to explore the world of healing and heal the planet one person at a time. Oh my gosh, today I'm so excited to have the American psychic Marla Frees with us today. And she, I mean, you know me, you guys know me, I love interviewing other psychics. I love expanding my pool of other psychics. So, because sometimes being a psychic is a very lonely journey. And I just enjoyed Marla's book so much, The American Psychic, a spiritual journey from Heartland to Hollywood, heaven and beyond. Um, and and Marla has an amazing life, like by anyone's standard. So she was an incredible, actress, an actor in Hollywood. She's been a professional actor for a while, and eventually left her TV and stage career to become a full-time transformational psychic medium who works closely with police and does forensic psychic, and also just really has an incredibly accurate evidential mediumship quality, and writes all about it in her book, which was a page turner for me. I read it all weekend and couldn't put it down. So thanks so much for being here today, Marla.
Lisa, I am just thrilled. Thank you so much.
It's me too.
Talk with another psychic,
isn't it? I know. I think like psychics are kind of lonely people sometimes. That sometimes we can't always share what we do. We can't. I know you and I both spend time hiding what we do from the world, and sort of and from the people that we know, and that it seems like a luxury to kind of come out of the psychic closet and share stories like the way that you do. So thank you for writing your book.
Oh, my pleasure. It's the greatest thing I've ever done, except live it. So living, yeah. surviving it.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about that. Like how, I know that you said your psychic, opening was pretty traumatic for you, but fill us in a little bit on how that happened.
Well, I didn't believe in this stuff, even though little pieces of it were speckled along my childhood. I had psychic snapshots, and there was a moment when I was 8 when I went blind to my present circumstances, and a movie started, and that movie became a reality. But the dynamic of actually surrendering to this work was not pretty. I was in the middle of a successful acting career, and I was stalked by someone, which was really bizarre because he ended up being a con artist. And when I actually went public with it and went to law enforcement and told them about him, that's when he became, very dangerous. And it was during that time when fear had sort of like, the last thing you want to do when you're a public person or acting or being on sets and television shows is to be frightened of somebody coming after you. That was so frightening that my antennas just blew out of my head. So I was feeling information around me. I kind of knew when he would be in the neighborhood, and I had to go to law enforcement. I'm kind of embarrassed about this. I thought I could handle it myself for a while. And I ended up going to law enforcement, and they helped me. And I, in turn, when all this stuff happened, I, in turn, started working for them. It was really one of those come to Jesus moments of surrendering to something that had been brewing in my soul for so long. And this, strange circumstance is what blew it all apart. And I started hearing from dead people. It's like, really?
That's so incredible. And your book is so full of those kinds of instances where what was traumatizing or difficult, and you certainly had your fair share and more of challenges and difficulties and traumas in your life. But in each one was an opportunity for you to learn something, or to strengthen yourself, or to learn how to trust your intuition. And I think you're really, so upfront about that in your book.
Yes, it was actually the grace of God at the time when I was living with my parents. My mom was not a well woman. And at a very early age, I knew I couldn't trust her. So part of my development of this psychic world was splitting out of my body, the psychotherapy term of of splitting or disassociation. And my consciousness was leaving my body. Who knew years later, 30 some years later, it would be helpful as not only a psychic, but as a remote viewer in the psychic functioning world. That part, plus having to navigate her. I could feel when a storm was brewing with her, and I had to protect myself because she was physically and emotionally abusive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it seems like your psychic ability is so much about threat assessment, and
yes, it is.
And like everybody has like their psychic angle is different. Like empaths are more maybe like healers. They're tuning into the emotional well-being of the people around them, and yours was about threat assessment because you grew up in a threat-filled environment, you know, and then throughout your life you were sort of challenged by these, or had opportunities, whichever way you want to look at it, to feel the threats in some very, like, not everybody hangs out with the mob, not everybody hangs out with spies, and that it seems like there's some extraordinary circumstances there and then I can see how the threat assessment aspect of what you were doing would translate into forensic work.
Yeah, it also translated into structural stuff. I see compromise, that's the medical stuff. I will see and feel compromise. And I think for your listeners, one of the things that, I really come to terms with is that our bodies are these Geiger counters. So the heart, the heart math of the heart knowing 400, or I guess it's 40,000 times stronger than the brain. The heart knows things, and and the body tells me where the threat happens to be, whether it's about a house or a relationship, and it's oftentimes medical stuff, but it's just a remarkable thing, isn't it?
So cool. Yeah.
That's why I put, this is shameless promotion, right? That's why I put this word here, my dear, the one that, had been so difficult in being able to say. But it's everything. It's all precognition. It's talking to dead people. It's everything that actually is the thread throughout the Bible of visions and prophecy. So we're calling it what it is, which is psychic functioning.
Yeah, I think it's really good to own it. And my book is called The Art of Psychic Reiki. So I also have psychic in my book title, and it was it hard for you? It was, even though I'd been working as a psychic forever and I'd never done anything else, it was still hard for me to put psychic on the title of my book. And I could feel that sort of fear come up in me of like, there's some parts of the world where they stone people like me, Did that happen for you?
Yes. Yes. Well, I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and it was a Bible. It's the Bible Belt in Pennsylvania. So I was part of that for a long time. I raised Lutheran, and then I became born again Christian. So I understood what the fear was. But then, when I ended up being hijacked to Cuba and I came home from that experience, I had a really rude awakening from the aspect of Jesus would save everybody if he could. So that dynamic of you don't have to be a card-carrying club member in the world of born again in order to be in the Christ light. And it was really impactful. I mean, I learned a lot from that strange trip that I ended up taking. But within that vernacular, I think it was truly in the mid-90s, the U.S. military psychic spies who basically helped me understand what this psychic word was and what the psychic functioning was. This was people from SRI, Stanford Research Institute, worked with Ingo Swann, who was a very famous psychic, who developed this controlled remote viewing, and how it was adapted by the military in order for espionage.
Right.
So I look at it that way, and I still work with a lot of the remote viewers, and I use that training in different ways. And people are still doing that, even though the group that was in the military has disbanded in the mid-90s. It was something that I think was really saved my life, Lisa.
Yeah, Yeah, it's excellent training, and it's and you can still get trained in it, even though there's people out there that are teaching remote viewing. And it was so interesting to me because they really felt like they could teach anyone, like that they could take anyone and teach them these skills.
I think so too, and I think that that's really the great thing about it, because I've been bridging, as you get to the end of the book, I've been bridging science for the last 10 years, working with physicist, author, and consciousness expert Tom Campbell, who basically was the guy, along with Dennis Metternich at the Monroe Institute with Bob Monroe, who developed the hemisync program, the balancing of brainwaves and binaural beats. So these scientists kind of know what's going on, not the materialistic science people, because anyone that thinks of spirituality and the consciousness of God, or just consciousness in itself, when we are tapping into that, that's threatening to some materialists.
Yeah.
But not the virtual reality scientists.
That's good. Yeah, I love that. And I love it that there's this whole emerging, where science, quantum physicists, and the people that study this are kind of proving through science what you and I have known and what metaphysicians have known all along. Like we're connected to each other in this energy field, the field. And when we learn how to read the field, we can bring in that, we can connect to anything. And I'm just also really want to talk to you about the forensic stuff, because I've never done that. And I know you in your book, you talk about just like learning that by practicing, by walking into a police station, wherever you are, and saying, do you have any unsolved cases I could practice on? Which I think is so cool that you did that. But tell us a little more about that.
Well, I think it really does come down to just, we can walk in anywhere and do what we do. It just so happened that I had a childhood, which I talk about in the book, where there were 3 murders in this very small town within a 2-year period, and I did them all. And that dynamic made me, it was like full stop. My life stopped, and I had to evaluate everything at the age of 12 and 13.
Right.
And I had to think about what happened to my classmate when she was raped and murdered. And I had to think about these older women that I saw almost every week of my life and what that might have been. And I had to become really curious instead of frightened. And I think that that's one of the most amazing parts of how I survived what was going on in my hometown. And it also gave me strength and knowledge and awareness so I could stop my mother from coming into the bathroom and doing things to me that shouldn't have been done. So it was a powerful transformation, not pretty, not pleasant, but I think that that's what gave me sort of the curiosity of being able to go in and work a homicide case. And it was the stalking incident which actually set me up to work with law enforcement. I picked up a picture on this detective's desk. I don't write about it in that book, but hopefully it'll come out in the next, where I'm basically looking at this and I go, this is a homosexual rage murder. And he said, what are you talking about? And he grabbed it out of my hands. But I could feel what was happening in just the photo, that psychometry that we are so interested in. So my suggestion to you, my psychic friend, is if it really is curious for you, then I really think that remote viewing is one way to get in and start to practice.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And then where you are outside of Boston, go talk to a detective and tell him who you are and say, listen, I'd really like to work on something for you. It's no skin off their nose. If it's a cold case, they don't, it's not a time situation. But you can go in and make friends with a detective, a homicide guy, and say, look, I've just been doing this for a while. There are a number of psychics out there that do this work. But the other thing that I did was I kept it pro bono because I didn't want to deal with the families. I had to deal with the actual detectives. So it was always pro bono work.
That's great. That's very cool. That's good advice. And it was so interesting to me the way you described like seeing things as if you're the victim and then even seeing things as if you're the perpetrator.
Yes, that was pretty trippy. And I, that was a television show that did not get picked up, but I had that all on camera, which I don't know where the footage is, but that was pretty remarkable in stepping into the evidence locker, seeing the evidence, and all of a sudden I was talking to the detective saying, I think I feel the perpetrator. I think he's dead. And why don't you interview me? Question me like the perpetrator. And information came out that we had no idea about.
Wow.
Yeah.
Super cool.
It was.
Super cool. And where are you now, like in terms of your gifts? I know they've evolved quite a lot. You do a lot of mediumship work, medical intuitive, and it seems to me like you've ended up in a place where you're really helping people at a much deeper level, really doing their inner growth, their inner transformation, having spiritual awakenings. Like, where is it now for you?
Well, I think that the book is really the best thing that I could have done for everyone, because it tells the story and you go on the ride with me, but that will encourage you to tell your own stories. I remember Oprah saying that telling the truth is one of the greatest things you can do for yourself. So that has inspired so many people to read the book and feel confident about moving forward and telling their own stories. So I think that's quite amazing for people that read it. But it's also anecdotal information. They go on the crazy ride that I took and all the dumb things that I did, and they will also see, well, if Marla can handle it, maybe I can. Or the things that inspired me with books and teachers and places that I went, so that they might too get inspired to expand their own awareness. So the book has been important, and of course, what's happened in our country and with COVID, it's made people go inward. It's made people read more books. I was on a book tour for 2 years. I was having the greatest time just going around with the book, and on my shoestring budget, I was still having a really wonderful time. And I think that right now it's working with people like you, my dear, getting that message out.
Yeah.
The book is on audio now, which is good, and it's in paperback and Kindle. But I think that the book, as a prerequisite to even working with me, because if you're interested in working with me, that's one thing. But taking the dive with the book helps you, right? Because it
absolutely
inspired you. So.
Totally did. It totally inspired me. And one of the things I loved the most about it was your relationship with the voice, with the thems. Is that what you call them? The thems? And that, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I loved it. I just loved what they said to you and how they love you and how they teach you and how they would help you sort of spin your perception around what was happening in these really powerful ways. So that I found that touching and inspiring.
Well, the voice was with me as a child, and I was listening to the voice. But then, I started talking to dead people, and then started channeling other energies and getting information from, an avatar in India, and all of these really crazy, wonderful stories that are in the book. But the point was, it was the listening. And Lisa, I think that the listening as an actress is a really keen thing. Because to be a good actress, you have to be able to listen to people. Right. And that gave me great training. So it was in also taking notes, sitting down and asking Spirit, what do you want me to know? But the thems came about during the divorce, when I was going through one of the greatest losses of my life. And people were asking me, what does God say? What do your angels say? What do the ascended masters say to you? What does Jesus and the Holy Spirit say? And I said, them, they're right here. They're telling me. So I made it a collective term, which actually means, because they said, well, if you're going to call us them, you better know that it stands for the Heavenly Eternal Messaging System.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. That's great. And what's next for you? Like, where do you feel like this is, not that it's not fine to be in the moment, but is there something new that's emerging for you, or where are you going now?
I have a deal to do reality programming. I've developed 2 shows about it, but that really depends on being with people. And that could be anything around that. And I mean, I just love people. I'm from a small town, and I've lived in cities for, for many, many years. So I can go anywhere and talk to anyone. So I think the dynamic is really what will consciousness, what will spirit, what will thems reveal. And I just trust that.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm having the greatest time meeting people like you.
Aw, thank you. Thank you so much. And if you were, a lot of people in the audience today are trying to build up their psychic or open their gifts a little more. What else can you say? We talked about remote viewing, listening to the voice. What else do you think is important?
Well, I like binaural beats, but you have to be careful about that. I recommend, of course, the HemiSync at Monroe Institute, but I've also been working with Tom Campbell, and Tom has been doing these immersives, which are 5-day immersives online. I mean, we've been doing them in England and all over the country, but they are truly Cadillac binaural beats that he takes you in, and he's a wonderful teacher. So he basically gives you the opportunity to have all of these remarkable experiences. But I think that for people on a day-to-day basis, you've got to get really hip to how your brain is working, what you're thinking, how many times a day you lie, how many times a day you manipulate situations in your own brain to make things okay for you because you don't want to tell the truth.
Right.
How and not medicating ourselves. We have to be strong. And I really, really recommend any kind of physical activity to move that information that you're getting through you.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. That seems beautiful. I love that too. And I think it's a lot of inner listening and paying attention,
Yes.
like, because you can have the voice, but if you're not paying attention, if you're not acting on it too, like, at least not all the time, but some of the times I think we can kind of jam up our receptors.
Our fears and our opinions will jam us up.
Yeah, absolutely. So Marla, how can people buy your book? Let's talk about your book for a little bit.
Oh, well, the audio book on Audible just came out a month ago, so that's kind of fun. On Amazon, Kindle and paperback, Barnes and Noble, Simon and Schuster. But I think the most affordable way is through Amazon. So
right, and I think we've got a picture we can put up here too. Here it is. There it is on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I would love to get the audiobook because it's so fun to listen to your voice, and your own voice as an actor telling your own story is pretty amazing. So I'm gonna run right out and get that audiobook.
Well, you're so sweet to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I'm just to meet you. Thank you so much. This is, what a great opportunity.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's absolutely my pleasure. And is there any last little tidbit? You do teach at all? I mean, do you do private sessions?
Well, the point is, with Zoom and everything, we're all getting prepared for Zoom. There's a spiritual social club with Jen Weigel that I'm doing on the 13th. I think there might be 2 seats left. So you can go to Jen Weigel and Spiritual Social Club. But I love teaching, but I like doing it in person. There's a room here with 2 sofas. Nobody's sitting in them.
I know. I know. It's so sad.
So of course we'll see what happens, but now I'm talking with you. So thank you.
And in the meantime, there's your beautiful book, which I hope everyone runs right out and gets. So thank you so much for being with us today, Marla, and sharing your wisdom and your life in such a beautiful, authentic, raw, and powerful way. I just appreciate you and your work so much.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
And thanks all of you guys who are listening today. I hope you can stop by and visit me at my website, lisacampion.com. lisacampion.com. Come by and see me. And we just so appreciate that you're here with us today on The Miracle of Healing, where we are healing the planet one person at a time right here on Empower Radio.